You've heard about the horrors of the apartheid system in South Africa. You've heard about the way the terrible white minority stole the land from the noble savage. You've heard of the thousands of needless black deaths in that country. You have definitely heard about Saint Nelson Mandela and his travails while trying to free his people from abject poverty. Well, this program and my South African guests are ready, willing, and able to tell you the truth about South Africa, which the media has deliberately hidden from you. We will dispel the myths and lies you have been fed and leave you with the bare facts.
Hoor jy die magtige dreuning? Oor die veld kom dit wyd gesweef. Die lied van 'n volk se ontwaking, wat harte laat sidder en beef.
Ek smoeg vir die vrese waarmee ons moet lewe, vir guns en vir moord en vir rape. Ek smoeg vir die bad news, vir Zuma en sy views, van ons op TV moet kyk. Ek wil nie meer hoor hoe ons tieners begrawe, oor niemand al steur aan die wet. Ek wil nie meer lees van affirmative action of beklei om te hou wat ek het. Gee vir my 'n nuwe gein, 'n koers toe plesier en 'n tellery, wat liedjies sing en skryf en stry oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly.
Welcome to Radio Free South Africa. This is your host, Karen Smith. I would like to give a big shout out to the Freedom Slips team and thank them for giving South Africans a platform to bring the world the true story of what is happening in South Africa. Please be aware that this media is only possible with the help of your donation to keep us on air. So please go to our store and indulge in some goodies, or make the best donation you can in order for us to keep bringing you the truth and news that the mainstream will not. Our guest today is Schalk van der Merwe, speaking from South Africa, who will discuss the true courage and staying power of the Afrikaners. We will also discuss some military history and the true meaning of genocide and why it applies to the Afrikaner. Welcome, Schalk.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Karen, for having me, and good evening, guests, to your show.
I'd also like to just say that we always have a problem with getting South Africans on the show, as you witnessed last week. So please be patient with us. We have a very Heath Robinson affair going here today. I have Schalk from South Africa on a speakerphone and then via Skype onto the show. So if the sound is a little bit wonky, please bear with us, because it's the very best that we can do to make these wonderful guests available to an American audience. Schalk, we spoke last week with Q and Elgin, and we spoke broadly about the history of South Africa and where we are today and why we're at today and where we think solutions to the South African problems are. And I got some feedback saying that I exalt the Afrikaner as though he were some god. So I think really what we need the world to understand is your favorite, we are not the bad guys. And explain to them why we are not the bad guys.
Thank you very much, Karen. Yes, that's a very interesting comment that you just raised, that maybe you try to exalt the Afrikaner people or the blue people. I think we've been misrepresented for many, many years in the media and to the outside world. Unfortunately, media bias through the years was against the Afrikaner people. And to a certain extent, because of the apartheid regime that was in South Africa. So unfortunately, there's this correlation now between Afrikaner people and the perceptions that people have about the apartheid regime. I don't think we need even to exalt Afrikaner people. We can simply just tell the truth people. And the American people will see that we are indeed not the bad guys of the world. We are not evil people. We are not people that are out there killing and maiming and doing silly stuff and ugly stuff to other people. And that is basically my mission here, to come and explain that to you.
Absolutely, because you know the perception that white South Africans murdered and slaughtered millions of blacks, and that we just oppressed them and put them on desert-like properties where they couldn't grow anything and they were starving to death, is absolutely incorrect, is it not, Schalk?
Yes, indeed, Karen. We have a lot of time, so I think I can really start at the beginning of the whole South African history as it has been portrayed from very early on. The first time the Europeans rounded the Cape that we are aware of was in 1482. That's about 3 years before Columbus 82 to your shores. And that was a Portuguese mission, and it was led by a person by the name of Diaz. And for about 200 years, there was a constant flow of Europeans around the Cape. They would occasionally stop taking fresh water, taking fruit, etc., and then journey on to India. By the mid-17th century, that is about 1652, the Dutch then decided to establish a stronghold there, a colony. But the objective of this colony was never to colonize or take over South Africa, Southern Africa, even Africa. It was simply intended to be a halfway stop on its way to India for the Dutch ships and for the other European nations to take in fresh produce and water. And that was the birth of South Africa. 1652, they sent a governor by the name of Jan van Riebeeck, and they established this port at Cape Town. In those days, it was either called the Cape of Good Hope, for the very simple reason it was halfway to India, or it was called the Cape of Storms, because the Cape is very famous for its very stormy weather and many ships that indeed sank on those shores. So that was the start of what is today the nation of South Africa. It was never intended as a colonization, as a mass extermination of a local population, of a taking over of a country or colony or anything in that way. The main objective of the Dutch was simply trade, and this was simply a trade post on their vast global trading network that they had at that time.
And then, Schalk, we also need to address that we stole the land, because what Africans were in South Africa when the Dutch arrived?
Yes, Karen, that is indeed also a greatly misunderstood misconception and misperception that has been relayed into the world. From the very early records kept by the Europeans, both the Portuguese people and Dutch settlers later on, it is very clear that the only people that they came into contact with at that stage, and this is now the most westerly part, southwesterly part of South Africa, the old Cape Colony, that area was inhabited by basically two main groups of people. The first were the so-called Bushmen. Later on in the years, the English referred to them as Bushmen. They themselves called themselves the Sun People, S-A-N, Sun People. They were basically a nomadic type of person living off the land. In fact, the Bushmen people still exist today in very small numbers, where they still live as new lived people. In other words, people coming from the Stone Age, literally. They were basically living there. The second group were more pastoral. They were the so-called Hottentots, the Khoi people. And they moved around. They were also nomadic. They moved around with their sheep and their goats and their cows. So it wasn't the case that it was a fully, densely populated black Africa that was now all of a sudden conquered by the European people. You would see that in the early days, the Dutch quite the problem of keeping the Hottentot people and the Bushman people, let's call them then the Khoisans, to keep them actually away from the colonists. They had to build the castle in the Cape, for instance. That was originally just a fort, a mud fort. Later on, they built a proper castle. The castle is still there today. It's one of the major tourist attractions in Cape Town. And around the Cape, that castle, they also had numerous other posts where they had to guard the colonists from these Khoisan people coming into the little area around the Cape. So that was the starting place. Then you will see that in the following years after the Dutch came there, numerous other people started to settle at the Cape. Many were ex-mercenaries working for the Dutch. My own family, the Van der Merwe people, we came to South Africa in 1667. My forebearer's name was Schalk Willem Wouter van der Merwe, a huge name. He was a semi-noble person coming from Europe, but he was a mercenary of the Dutch East India Company, and they settled there. And many other people started to migrate into South Africa, not as conquerors, but simply because there was this huge virgin land at the southern tip of Africa where they could actually come and settle. And it was never the case like in America where you had large tracts of land being densely populated by the Indian, by the Native American people, and the whites sweeping over that. We simply went to live where there were no other people. That is how the Cape Colony was born. So it's a total misconception that the early Cape or the early South Africa was the scenario of white people coming and stealing black people's land. The first time that we actually met as white colonists, we met black colonists, were much later on in history. When we met them on the Fish River, far into the Eastern Cape. That was basically the first time that we became aware that there were black races or black nations also moving into South Africa, but from the north and not from the south where we were coming from.
And that was approximately 100 years after after the Dutch landed at the Cape.
Yes, at least 100 years. I'm sitting with a book in my hand here that was written in 1807 by the very famous traveler called Wittgenstein. And he traveled the whole of the southern tip, the old Cape Dutch colony. And it's very interesting how far he had to travel before the first time he started to meet people that are now known as black people. And it was, for instance, the Botswana people. He had to travel very, very far up north, even across the Great River, that was later on called the Orange River. And that was the first time that he started to see that there's black people also living here scattered all over the place. Now, by that stage, let's call it around the 1800s, what basically happened in the Cape is that slowly these European migrants started to land in the Cape. They started to move inland. Later on, they became what was known as vryburgers. That simply means that they were free citizens. They could own your land. They could farm the land. And because they were pioneers, they started going over Cape Mountains. And they started to go into what is today called the Eastern Cape, and also in the area that is called the Karoo. That is basically a desert area to the north of the Cape. And they started to settle there as European settlers, as people. And they decided to come to Africa to come and live there. So I want to emphasize this. We are not dealing with a situation of mass immigration, military action, killing of black people, genocide, and then settling on the land. We simply went to live where nobody else was living.
Exactly. And then, this is the funniest one. I got this comment as well, that the Dutch that landed at the Cape and colonized South Africa were the criminals deported from Europe. Could you just just address that as well, because I don't know how to answer that. They seem to think that it was the same kind of business as Australia, where the criminals were sent to Australia as a punishment. But I got 3 comments of that nature, and I don't know how to answer it because my answer is very rude.
Yeah, mine will be very rude also. It's simply nonsense. The Cape was never a penal colony. You had certain areas in the northern part of Africa. We're speaking of thousands upon thousands of kilometers to the north, where the French had penal colonies. Africa was never intended as a penal colony for the very simple reason. Africa was the place where the slaves and the ivory and all the trade goods came from. So you could really go and make a penal colony and settle criminals in a place where you want to trade. You're quite correct that Australia, unfortunately, I have nothing against Australians. They just don't play that well, the rugby that well. But they were indeed a penal colony. The British, now remember the early history of the Cape, we were Dutch. We're speaking here of the English colonial mastery of Australia. That was indeed a penal colony. It started off as a penal colony. Tasmania was basically one big prison. But that was certainly not the case in South Africa. To make it maybe more understandable for your American listeners, your own father, the Puritan, who came to the American shores, I think in 1625, if I remember correctly, and they were found at Jamestown. That was the same scenario that we had in South Africa. The people coming to South Africa, the migrants, as I already said, many of them, the people in the employ of the Dutch East India Company, so they would have been officials, they would have been mercenaries, they came and they simply settled in the Cape because I assume it was a good place for them to stay. And gradually you had a flow of migrants coming in, first mostly from Holland, from the Netherlands, because it was a Dutch colony, but then also increasingly from areas in Germany. And then by the late 17th century, 1685, 1687, thereabouts, there was also a big influx of French. Now, who were these French people? It were Protestant people from France that were basically in Europe facing persecution for their religion. So they started to flow into the Cape. They were called the French Huguenots. So those were the other people. And these are also this is also the basis of the Afrikaner people who started to move and come and live in South Africa. It's simply nonsensical to say it's a bunch of criminals. It was certainly not. You would find a very high percentage of middle class and even nobility that came from Europe to settle in South Africa.
And the French Huguenots, Schalk, the French Huguenots were actually fleeing Europe because of their religion. They were fleeing religious persecution, were they not?
Yes, indeed. To take the history a little bit back, let's explain this to your listeners. At that point in time, we're speaking about the 15th, 16th, and 17th century in Europe. So huge turmoil between the Catholics and the Protestants. During the era 1618 to 1684, we had the 30 Years' War in Germany, and that caused a huge displacement of people. I mean, it was 30 years that Central Europe faced a war, and all the nations of Europe was involved in that. And many of those scatterings found their way to the Cape, because the Cape was a Dutch-ruled and Dutch-owned colony, which by definition would have been Protestant, and more specifically Calvinistic Protestant. So it literally became a haven for Europe's Calvinists, who at that point actually faced to be genocided and then to be killed off in France, in many other places, certain areas in Germany. And that is why the Cape all of a sudden, also like North America, became their haven for where they could go.
So essentially, they fled for freedom of religion.
Yes, that's indeed true. And it became, there's something people must always remember about the Afrikaner or the Boer people. The central theme of our existence has always been freedom, not oppression, not taking from the other person, but it has been freedom. It is so ingrained into our DNA, we can never get it out. Because our forefathers were those people that actually fought for their freedom, and they came here, they left everything they had in Europe, and they came here to be free. That was their own wish. And when they came here and they started to settle themselves here, as already spoke about, the so-called vryburgers, free burgers, they actually at one point in time became so free that they even started to oppose the Dutch government itself. That was even before the English took over the Cape in the early 1800s.
Wow. So also somebody mentioned a Freiburger uprising, but I can't find any information on such a thing.
Yes, no, there was definitely a Freiburger uprising. It was at the time of the younger van der Stels. There was the older governor van der Stel, who was a very good governor, and then later on his son, Willem Adrian van der Stel, became the governor. And he started to impose taxes, and he started to become a little bit of a dictator. And at that point in time, the Freiburgers actually then revolted. They simply revolted against the Dutch authorities. So yeah, that's indeed true. You must also remember that the name Afrikaner came out of that same situation where a young man with the name of Thibault, half drunk, apparently, rode down the street and for the first time exclaimed, "Ik ben een Afrikaner." That is Dutch. In Afrikaans, ek is een Afrikaner, and in English, I'm an Afrikaner. So that was basically at the same point in time where all these things started to happen.
Wow. And was that then, Schalk, one of the causes of the Great Trek?
No, that's quite a bit earlier than the Great Trek. What happened in the meantime? Then in Europe, the Napoleonic War started just after the French Revolution. French Revolution in late 1780s to early 1790s. We had the Napoleonic Wars, and then by 1806, the British came to South Africa and they conquered the Cape Colony from the Dutch. Because it was a strategic place, of course, to land the British Navy in their great naval battles against the French and the Spanish. And then South Africa became a colony of Britain. Now, this introduced something totally new to the Vryburgers and the established people in the Cape, because all of a sudden another white nation, if you want to call it that, European nation, the British, were now ruling them. And the British were totally foreign to them in their ways, their culture, and their religion. The legal systems of the British were also totally different. So this was a very big problem for the Afrikaans. At that point, not really Afrikaans, let's call them Dutch people that were living in the Cape. Already, they were a nation on their own. They didn't see themselves as Dutchmen anymore, or Frenchmen or Germans. But it was the embryo, if you want to, of the later Afrikaner people and the later Boer people. So it was the introduction of British colonial rule that in the end ended up in the Great Trek.
I also was told by somebody that they didn't actually conquer the Dutch in the Cape, but the Dutch sold the Cape to the British for £6,000. Is there any truth in that?
I'm not really sure about the Cape being sold. What did happen was that you must remember that Holland at the point in time in about 1806, they were under the colonial or the rule of Napoleon. They were part of the continental system of Napoleon, whether they liked it or not. So they had very little control over their colonies, and it was very easy pickings for the very strong Royal Navy just to simply go and take over Dutch colonies. It happened in the Cape, it happened in the West Indies, it happened in the East Indies, in Indonesia. So I'm not sure that the southern part, what happened and what happened to the physical takeover of the Cape or Cape Town itself. The Dutch governor at that point started to have a little commando that he drawn from the Vryburgers, and they actually wanted to go and confront the British. But I think they realized there was no use in fighting the British. It was one colonial master versus another colonial master. So it was quite a bloodless takeover. It was not a big battle in which the British took the Cape to the Dutch.
Alrighty, and of course, as you say, this was a very strange way of life to the Dutch, the burgeoning South African population, because they probably didn't speak English. They spoke a whole bunch of other languages, and the rule must have been very different. The way of ruling.
Yes, indeed. The Dutch people very, and once again, I now include the French, I include the German settlers. They were very religious. You must remember, as we spoke about earlier, they left Europe because of their religion. So their religion was very close to their hearts. Their church was very close to their hearts. And they interpreted the Bible quite literally. They lived along the laws of the Bible. The legal system in South Africa is still called today the Roman Dutch law, which actually denotes its founding in Roman law, but more specifically Roman Catholic law maybe, and then later of the Dutch influence into that. So it was a society that was already established, and all of a sudden you had a totally foreign, different European nation now ruling them. With a host of different rules and ethics and values and religion, and it caused huge problems and the clash of cultures, and that in the end resulted in the Great Trek.
Right. So now let us move on to the Great Trek, because this is where the Afrikaner, never mind that they had left Europe because of religious persecution, so already had shown their mettle because they refused to give up their religion. But now this is where the strength and courage of the Afrikaner really starts shining in South Africa, is during the days of the Great Trek.
Yes, indeed so. Before the era of the Great Trek, there were a generation that was called the Trekboere. Now, a Trekboer simply means that it were the Boer people, the Afrikaans people, the Dutch people trekking. And trekking in Africa simply means you pack up everything you have, you pack onto an ox wagon, and you start moving until you find a place where nobody else does. Mm-hmm. That's trekking. Mm-hmm. And this is it. And they started to spread over the whole southwest part of South Africa, as far up as the Orange River, that's today, and in the east, plus minus where the Fish River were, where they encountered the Xhosa people and the Tembu people. They had numerous clashes and little border conflicts, and the one man stealing the cattle of the other, and raiding parties across, pretty much like you've seen in the Western movies of United States, of the Indians and the settlers fighting. That was basically the same scenario there. But in the end, it started to become quite peaceful between the Trekboere and the Xhosa people. Then by the 1820s, the British landed a huge number of settlers in the Eastern Cape. They are still called, or they are very well known as the 1820 settlers, sorry.
Yeah.
And these people were mainly of English and Asian Dutch descent. It were basically the people that now, after the Napoleonic Wars, were now uprooted in Europe and Britain, and Britain sent them to the colonies. Remember, in those days, Hesse, that's part of Germany today, was still a principality of the British. And these people started to settle in the Eastern Cape. So that introduced a cause of friction for the Afrikaners, for the Boer people. not the biggest problem. The biggest problem came with the slaves. The British emancipated the slaves, and the poor people started to lose their control over their slaves, who were also their laborers. So that was also a big problem. Relating to law, relating to all these factors. So by the 1830s, there was a very large movement among the poor people, especially in the Eastern Cape, where they started to believe, but we can't live in the Cape Colony anymore. We want our freedom. Now, a generation back, under the old Dutch rule, they even went so far during those troubles to also create little republics. The one was Swellendam, and the other, I think, was Kolbach. So they already had a history of coming together and creating little republics of their own. And by the 1830s, as I said, that big idea started to blossom in the Eastern Cape, and they started to think to themselves. When you read all the manuscripts from that time, it was a coming together of minds. But we want to be free. Now, we can be free in two ways. Either we can now fight the British and try to get them out of South Africa, out of the Cape Colony, and rule ourselves, or we can track it in. Now, remember, they were the offspring of the track books. So it was in their nature. It was not really very scary for them to pack up everything in Delhi and just simply move away to where they could be free. And that is what in the end happened. That was the choice that they exercised. So a very large percentage, especially the more rich Boers who could actually afford it, started to literally pack up everything that they owned, packed it on ox wagons, and they started to move north. That was about from 1834 onwards, and that became known as the Great Trek, during which about 4,000 of these Boers started to move north into what is today called the Orange Free State, later on Natal, and even as far up as Loreto Marks and into Mozambique during later. It was a mass migration at that point of whites into the interior of South Africa, and specifically Boer Dutch whites.
So is it that at that time that they met the to become Zulu clan coming south, or had they already met them before then?
As I said earlier, that the first time that the European trekkers or the settlers met black people, what is today called black people, that was on the Fish River in the Eastern Cape. Now, if you look at the map of South Africa, you will see that the Fish River and then the Eastern Cape, the rivers of the Eastern Cape, eventually run into the mountainous areas that later on becomes the Drakensberg. When you look at the people living in South Africa at that stage, you will see that the Nguni people, now those are the Swazi people, it's the Zulu people, it's the Xhosa people, the Tembu people. They were slowly but surely moving down south the coast, but to the east side of the Drakensberg. And that is still where you find their homelands. That is where they started to settle. In the interior of South Africa, you had scattered Khoisan people, you had scattered Bechuana people, but nothing really substantial there as nations or as kingdoms, etc. In fact, the first big kingdom that actually came to being in South Africa was only in the 1820s and 1830s in what is today called Natal, and that was under the great Shaka Zulu. Before Shaka Zulu, there was technically no states, black states, or even political units in South Africa. It was simply nomadic people moving south to pastures where the animals could live on. The Great Tracts specifically went into the interior where their scouts told them there were nobody living. It was barren, virgin land. That is why they trekked there. They didn't go in and take somebody else's land. They trekked where nobody else lived to go and settle there.
Yeah, absolutely, because as we will keep stressing throughout this program, all they wanted was their freedom to live their lives, to have a place to farm, to be free of of taxation without representation, to be free of other people's laws and morals that they didn't agree with, and to basically be left alone. They didn't want to colonize, slaughter, fight, none of those things.
You must remember something, and as I said, the theme of the Afrikaners' whole existence through centuries has been freedom. We've always opted to rather be the lesser and move away or stand back because we wanted to be free. You will never find the Afrikaner people being the aggressors. You will never find the Afrikaner people going and looking for war. When we fight until the death, but we don't start the fight. You will never find that in our history. It is always forced upon us. It is always because somebody wants to take away our freedom, wants to take away our land. That's where it comes from. But unfortunately, as we started this program, we have been misrepresented as these evil people, always on the war path, always looking to get to the next fight, to start the war. And that was certainly not what the Voortrekkers did, and not what the generations after them did. Okay, let's take it from where the Voortrekkers went into the interior. Eventually, they started to go over the Drakensberg, and they met the Zulu people there. And in negotiations and peaceful negotiations, they started to move into an area where the king of the Zulus, it was not Shaka Zulu anymore, it was his brother, who technically came to power through a coup. He killed Shaka, and then he took over the Zulu nation. They negotiated with him for a piece of land in Natal. And that is where the famous incident of Pieter happened. Because during the negotiations, and I would assume the last part of these negotiations, the Zulu king simply decided that he wasn't going to honor the agreement anymore, and he ordered Pieter and 67 of his followers that were negotiating to be killed. And that spurred the great Zulu war between the Voortrekker people in Natal and the Zulus that concluded in 1838 at Blood River, where the Zulus were simply routed. Now, when I speak about routed, I literally mean they were demolished. On the Zulu side, conservatively, maybe as many as 12,000 Zulus were killed. On the Voortrekker side, not a single person was killed. The only casualties there were 3 people that were likely injured. But the Zulus were routed. And that caused a republic then to come into existence in Natal. That was actually called the Republic of Natalia. That was a Voortrekker republic. So that was the first republic that the Voortrekkers in established, and that was in Natal.
And then came the British to Natal.
Yes, because then the British realized, but there is now a new part of Africa that has already been conquered, if you want to call it like that, and they decided they want it. And they landed in Port Natal, that is today Durban. And what ensued after that was basically that the British through war took off from the Voortrekkers to the Republic of Natalia. And Natal became a British colony. And once again, the Boers had to pack up and they had to move away. Some of them went and they founded what was called the New Republic, Nuwe Republiek. That was in the area of what is today called Vryheid, freedom. Once again, the fifth. That's in the northwestern part of Natal. But by that time, there was also a republic in what is called today the Free State. It's still called Free State, Vrystaat. Once again, freedom. The Oranje Vrystaat, it was named after the Prince of Oranje, the old Dutch monarch. That was in the interior, and also certain republics of Potchefstroom, of Pinper, all those, all amalgamated in the end to form the big Boer republics of the DPR, Suid-Afrikaanse Republiek, that was the old Transvaal, and then the Orange Free State. So they had to move away from the British city.
Once again, they didn't want to fight about it. They just left their semi-established farms and got in their wagons and trekked away, rather looking for freedom and peace.
Exactly. That is exactly what happened. But as history unfortunately unfolded, by this time, also to the western part of South Africa, the British started to expand their colonial empire. There was the possibility of mineral riches in Africa, and the British wanted that. And the next big event in South Africa after the Great Trek was, of course, the discovery of diamonds in what is today Kimberley. And when the British realized that there were diamonds, it simply turned the politics of South Africa around. From where South Africa was this far away, unpopular part of the British Empire, just simply a trading post, to all of a sudden becoming the most important part of the British Empire because of diamonds, because of all these mineral riches that the British realized were under the ground in Africa.
And that led to the two Boer Wars.
Yes, eventually it would lead to the Boer Wars. The issue of the diamond fields, what is today Kimberley, the whole area, it's basically a little triangle made by the Vaal River in the north, the Orange River in the south. The British actually claimed that as part of the Cape Colony. Now, here's the interesting thing. The Orange Free State did not want to go to war. So you have the British literally taking a part of the Orange the Orange Free State, and Orange Free State backing up and saying, look, you can take the diamonds. We just want our freedom. And in the end, that part of the Orange Free State, by treaty, was given to the British to ensure peace, to make peace with the British so that the Orange Free State colony could still exist. That was about in the middle of the 19th century. What escalated from there on was that there was constant fighting against Boers, and always these clashes with the Zulu people, and always clashes with the Matabele people, etc., but also with the British. It ended up in the British then annexing the ZAR, the Afrikaanse Republiek, the Transvaal, and that led to the first Boer War. That was actually won by the Boers. It was a very small war. You will remember that the British General Colley led a detachment of the British soldiers, and then they were beaten by the Boers, and the Boers once again took their freedom over the ZAR. That was in 1881.
Now, during that war, the Brits did not bring in troops from elsewhere. They just fought with their local troops.
Yes. As I said, the first Boer War was quite a small war. It was not the big Boer War that later on your American listeners will definitely also know about. But that was the first time that the British were actually beaten on colonial soil by local people, and that was the first Boer War. Now, by the mid-1890s, about 10 years from the first Boer War, the next big thing in South Africa happens. They discovered gold in Transvaal. And, well, if the British like the diamonds, they like the gold even more. And it became a huge gold rush into what was then the Transvaal Republic, the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic. Thousands upon thousands of British, of Poles, of Jewish people, of German people, everybody, even Chinese, started to flow into Transvaal to go and extract the gold. And that is where the city of Johannesburg comes from. It's still today the richest city in Africa. They started to mine gold there. And that led to the British Empire decided, well, we want the gold of the ZAR, and if that's going to be the case, we will have to take over the Boer republics. To make a long history short, through all kinds of politicking and foul play behind the scenes, in the end, the ZAR and the Orange Free State were forced into the Second Boer War that lasted from 1899 until 1902. And that was a major war. It was actually the biggest war between the First World War in 1914 and the old Napoleonic Wars of the early 1800s, in which Britain was involved. In the end, they had more than 250,000 of their troops in South Africa to fight off the Boers and to try to take over the republics.
Now we also need to explain that while the British had an army that belonged to the government, they were paid, they were government troops as such. The South Africans, the Boers, did not have any such thing. They did not have a standing army.
No, indeed not. Now you must this is where you have to start to realize the nature of the Boer. The nature of the Boer is independent, is very tough, is Calvinistic, he believes in his God, he believes himself to be even superior as chosen by God. This is the basis on which Afrikanerdom, the Boer people, were built. They lived off the field. They lived off the land. They built everything that they needed from what they could take off the land. They couldn't import from Europe. It was thousands upon thousands of kilometers away. What they had and what they needed, they had to do themselves and make themselves. Even today, you will find these huge stone kraals in which they had their cattle and the sheep and all these things. It was an extremely independent type of person. Hard riding, they were people were really used to horse riding. They were excellent shots. They knew the land as they would know the palm of their own hand. So these are the good people. And they've battled for now nearly 200 years against everything that nature could throw at them. And they battled the Zulu people and the Matabele. And they battled everything just to get their freedom and to survive. Now, the word commando, these days commandos are seen as special troops going in, doing the killing and getting out. But the word commando comes from the old Boers. What commando meant was that in every district you had a field cornet, he was a chosen official, and when war comes, or when there was some threat, this field cornet will then go around to the farms, and he will command all the Boer men, the able-bodied men, to take up their arms, take their rifles, take their food, a wagon or two or three, and then they go on commando, and they go and make war. That was basically a citizens' army, and in the truest sense that you could ever have. And when eventually the big Boer War, the one of 1899, happened, the Boers could put into the field as many as 54,000 of these citizen soldiers simply going to war. The only regular part of their army was their state artillery, which was very small. They didn't spend huge money on weapons. They had a small state artillery in the Free State as well as the ZAR. And the mass of their army was simply citizens taking the horses, taking the rifles, and going to fight the British.
So there were possibly 54,000 of them, and as many as 250,000 Brits.
Yes, you must remember that in the early parts of the war, the Boers fought on two fronts. They fought in the west, in Kimberley, and in the Cape Colony at that point in time, of course, was still a British colony. So part of their force they had to send to the west, and part of their force they had to send into Natal, which was also a British colony. And at any given point in time, the Boers were outnumbered horribly by the British. We speak about maybe 1 to 4, 1 to 5. As you already also said, you must remember that the Boers were citizens. It was a citizen force, whereas the British were a professional army, backed up by supplies, backed up by artillery, all those things. And then something very strange happened. The British were under the impression that they would be back home for Christmas in 1899.
Yes.
But they encountered something that they never expected. They were beaten in bloody battle after bloody battle by the Boers, and they were beaten soundly. Places like Colenso, places like Spioenkop became a rout and a bloody rout for the British. And all of a sudden, the British realized they couldn't simply come and take the colonies of the republics of the Boers away again. And in that started the propaganda to depict the Afrikaner people, the Boer people, as these low-class, sick, warring, strange people that has to be exterminated from the earth, the face of the earth. In that lies the problem that we are still faced with more than a century later.
Wow. But the British had never come into contact with the kind of guerrilla warfare that the Boers were expert in.
Yes, indeed. So you must remember something about the Boer War. There's two distinct phases to the Boer War. The first phase of the Boer War was the static kind of warfare. Now, we were ahead with the World War with at least 50 years because the First World War, if you go and study the First World War, especially the Western Front in Belgium and Flanders and so forth, you will find the European soldiers digging themselves into trenches and fighting from trenches. Now, up to that point, it was not part of modern warfare. The last time the trenches were actually used were in the late 1500s, and in a totally different context than modern warfare. The Boers, they dug themselves into trenches without any schooling, without any knowledge of modern warfare. It simply made tactical sense to them to dig themselves in and use the advantage of their motor rifles and kill off the British in scores who still employed tactics of 100 years back that was used in Napoleonic Wars. And that it was that strategic and tactical thinking of the Boers that ensured that the first part of the war, the first phase of the war, certainly went the way of the Boers. Unfortunately, because they were outnumbered tremendously and they were outgunned tremendously and they didn't have enough supplies, when the main forces, the big forces of the empire, and they came from all over the empire, started to arrive in the two colonies of the British, it became just simply impossible to have a static conventional war anymore. And that is where the second part, the guerrilla war of the Boers, that is where that came from.
And of course, the Boers did not schlep along huge supply trains, and they didn't have columns and columns of people marching with drummers and dust rising. They were just hidden away in the bush.
Exactly. As they did for centuries, they simply lived off the land. They utilized everything and anything they could utilize. They were truly, and especially the second phase, this guerrilla phase, they were the classic guerrilla fighters of in the rest of the world 60, 70 years later. The Boers did it in the Boer War. What Mao Zedong did in the 1950s in China, the Boers did it first. We didn't invent guerrilla warfare. It was invented during Napoleonic Wars in Spain, of course. The word guerrilla is a Spanish word. But I think we perfected it. Because for more than 2 years, and by that time we're not even speaking of 50,000 Boers in the field anymore. Maybe as many as 25,000, the so-called Britons, were fighting the British still through this guerrilla warfare. And the British simply could not beat them. In the end, there were more than 250,000 of British troops in South Africa trying to stop 25,000 Britons, and they simply couldn't do that. The only thing that the British could do was then to introduce a policy of scorched earth and the concentration camps. Now, the American listener will maybe, if he hears the word concentration camp, immediately think of Nazi Germany. Now, the Germans were certainly not the first people to think out concentration camps. It was the British. The British went literally from farm to farm, catch all the Boer women, catch all the Boer children, burn the farm, destroy everything, kill the crops, kill the animals, kill the farm stock, and take those women into concentration camps, which initially was simply that. They simply concentrated these people. But later on, it very definitely became death camps. Maybe not intentionally from the Boers, although although certain documents at this point in time start to show that there was maybe intention of simply genociding the poor people of the face of the earth. But the effect was that thousands upon thousands of them died in those death camps. And that was what, in the end, caused the bitter enders to come to a point where they said, they are killing off our women and they are killing off our children to such an extent that we have nothing left to fight for. It would be better to go to make a peace settlement with them. And in the end, in 1902, a peace settlement was introduced, the Peace of Vereeniging, in which the Boers laid down their arms and the Boer War effectively came to an end.
I think that's also very important for people to understand, is that the Brits did not win by battle. The Boers one more time just said, look, we are fighting this war to protect our peace, to protect our families, to protect our farms, to protect our women. And you have taken that all away. There's nothing for us to go back to. We don't have farms. Our women and children are dead. Our elderly are dead. So we don't have anything to fight for anymore.
Exactly. That was the disparity that the Boer bitter enders, that is what they had to face. I live in what is still called today the Orange Free State. Now the Orange Free State, it's flat plains, it's like prairie. It's very much like the prairies of North America. So you don't have a lot of landmarks here, mountains, etc., rivers, streams, to indicate where you are. It was a very common thing for the Boers after the war to return to where they remembered their farms to have been. But they literally could not find their towns and their farms anymore, because it was demolished. There was nothing left. It was destroyed to the level of soil. That was the wanton destruction that the British Empire caused for the Boer people. The effect of this war was what was later on called the armblanke probleem, the poor white problem, because you had all these poor people returning to what were their farms and what were their towns, but there was nothing left. So these people became abruptly poor, extremely. We're not speaking about not being able to buy nice clothes. We're speaking about people that died of hunger because of the war. And these things are forgotten. These things are not written about. But it's a part of Afrikaner history that from there on shaped the way that Afrikaners and Boers saw themselves. And the struggle for freedom just became so much more intense and so much more full of drive to once again be free.
So essentially,
and not be at the mercy of somebody else.
So essentially, Schalk, and we are coming up to a break, which is a good place for us to stop. Essentially, the 20% about of the Afrikaner population died in the concentration camps, and who knows how many afterwards of starvation, hunger, desperation, nowhere to live, etc. It must have taken generations to replace those lost numbers.
Exactly, and that is what happened for about 2 generations until the 1930s. The Afrikaner was foreign in his own land. The Orange Free State was always Afrikaner Boerland. The Transvaal was always Boerland. The most part, the biggest part of the Cape Colony, the Cape Province, was always Afrikaner Boerland. But now we were foreigners in our own land. It was taken by the British from us. And this caused a huge hate and a very deep rift and a psychological scar, I think, in Afrikaners that for generations thereafter they tried to overcome. And in a certain respect, they are still trying to overcome.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things I find so difficult to come to terms with. Being an English-speaking South African, I find it very hard to come to terms with the English Afrikaans problem, because I consider myself a South African. I come from both. I come from a Dutch family and a British family, and I find it very hard to come to terms with the fact that I'm not a very popular type of South African because I'm English.
Yes, that's interesting. I think, and I'm saying this with a smile, I think the biggest scars were actually healed by the time of the Angolan Bush War, where white South Africans and black South Africans, but white South Africans fought shoulder to shoulder against the communists. And I think the big Afrikaner English animosity to a certain extent died in that war. There we were simply brothers in arms, and we fought a common enemy. And I see it as the point in our history where the white nation became the white nation in South Africa. You were simply a South African. It was incidental where you spoke Afrikaans or English, or Portuguese or Greek, for that matter. There's always a little joke of soties. Now, I'm not going to say where actually very vulgar.
But very funny, Schalk. Very funny.
They were called little soties. So it became more the subject of a jest, of a joke, than actually a rift between the white races. But that was only during the Angolan War. So we're speaking about the 1960s, 70s, 80s, where the real white nation of South Africa started to together.
Apparently, we are not going to get adverts today. So what I thought I would do is I will just play our opening music, which is an Afrikaans. Oh, wow, even a better idea. Schalk, do you need to take a break? In which case I'll play some music, or else I will bring on a co-host and she and you can have a chat quickly while I go and see to some necessities.
No, I'm fine. I can go on. Thank you very much.
Alrighty. I'm going to bring on another host, Patricia Aiken, who is a great fan of the Boer, and she has done an incredible amount of talking about the South African story. She is a wonderful person, and you and she can have a chat while I go and do what I need to do. Patricia, are you there? Apparently we are not going to get adverts today, so what I thought I would do is I will just opening music, which is an Afrikaans. Oh, wow, even better. Patricia, are you there? In which case I'll play
I am.
Music. All right. Patricia, you meet Schalk.
Hold on, I've got to shut off you guys. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
Meet Schalk. Schalk, meet Patricia. I will be back in 2 ticks.
Okay, Schalk, great show today. I just really enjoyed the information that you're sharing with everyone.
Thank you very much, Patricia. It's a great honor for me to speak to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, you don't know if it's an honor or not yet, so just hold on here. Listen, you're talking about the Boer Wars, and I don't know, and it's so funny that they're called the Boer Wars when they were really started by the Anglos.
Yes, indeed. These days, and especially in English literature, you will always call it a Boer War. Sometimes the Anglo-Boer War. In Afrikaans, we actually don't call it the Boer War. We call it the Vryheidsoorlog. And once again, the Freedom War. So you have the Eerste Vryheidsoorlog and the Tweede Vryheidsoorlog. The first Freedom War and the second Freedom War. For ourselves, there's always been a struggle for freedom. But the British, you must remember, you also had the Anglo-Afghan War, you had the Anglo-Sudan War, the Anglo-everything war. The British basically made war against everybody. But you're quite right. It's maybe a misnomer to simply call it the Boer War, with the implication that the Boers were the aggressors in that war.
Well, thank you. I agree, and it's only because of Karen and that set me on a path to looking into this. Actually, the first South Africans I ever met were living in Hawaii, on Maui, actually. And it's no surprise to me after I've always wanted to visit South Africa that they would actually pick Maui to settle because it's Maui's kind of a microcosm. It has a lot of the same features that South Africa has just in a small package. So it doesn't surprise me that they'd settle there. You'll have to go and see it. It's a little mini South Africa in a lot of ways.
Well, maybe I must imitate there, but no, yeah, that's really interesting when you tell me that. Yeah.
Yeah. So but they were very well. One group was very liberal, and the other one just had very small things to say. It was during apartheid that I met him, and I was fascinated because he said, without saying too much, that apartheid was difficult for the blacks as well, that you were harming the blacks with apartheid as well as the whites. And I said, oh, well, that's a really interesting point of view. Because I was a dyed-in-the-wool liberal at the time. I woke up shortly after that.
Yes.
So it was apartheid was damaging for everyone. And when you lived through that, how did it feel to be going through that and to be so vilified and know the truth? Were South Africans just outraged by this?
Yes, yes. And we are still outraged because of it. You must remember something. I'm going to throw two numbers at you, and you obviously a very intelligent person, so you're going to realize why I throw those numbers. The first number I want to throw to you is that the South African black population in the 100 years of the so-called apartheid, it's not all apartheid, but in that last 100 years, the black population didn't increase by 900%. It increased ninefold. So that's the first number. The second number is that at no point in time were there ever more than 4.5 million white people in South Africa, and there's still only 4.5 million white people in South Africa. Now, one of the key factors or the key indicators of how good a population is increase in its numbers. Now, from this, I can state categorically that black people were not killed off in millions, were not genocided, did not receive the worst kind of system the world ever saw, if they could increase ninefold in number. That's impossible. Apart from that, it's very, very bad and ugly sight, especially on a more micro basis. But as a whole, South Africa benefited hugely because of a system like apartheid and before it, even the colonial system of white rule over the black masses.
Well, I can certainly see that. And with the black population just outbreeding the whites and flooding into your country and overwhelming the infrastructure, I don't see a problem with apartheid. I really don't understand. The outrage has been completely manufactured, Marxist manufacturing tool against whites, as it continues to be all around the world. When I saw the report of the Paris bombing in shooting attacks yesterday, I said, wow, it's like Nelson Mandela lives. I mean, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Here they're starting in with bombings in other places, just like South Africa went through.
You must remember something about Nelson Mandela. Here's the narrative that the media has built around Nelson Mandela. He was this great freedom fighter. Then the evil apartheid / Nazi regime took him in custody, and he was incarcerated for 27 years. I remember in one movie I saw that they had like little island, right? With grass leaves and the hearts that's made of grass, and he was now kept there. And then he was released because the ANC won some great battle against apartheid. That is absolute nonsense. It does not exist. It's not even well written. It's not even well written fiction. Mandela was a criminal. They were terrorist criminals. He was incarcerated. He was brought before a properly constituted court of law. That in the end, where he was found guilty on multiple charges of extreme terrorism, of murder, of all these things. He was found guilty in a proper court of law. And his sentence was even reduced on mitigation from the death sentence until incarceration, prison sentence. Prison sentence. Now, if those things happen, how evil could this system have been? Then he was sent to Robben Island. Now, if you see photographs during the years of Mandela in his cell, you will see that it was quite a comfortable place to be in. People have this idea of this little small cell, 2 feet by 2 feet, and you can't even see outside. That was definitely not what was going on. The people on the Robben Island, you can go and visit the place yourself. It was the situation was a simple, common prison system. It's not torture rooms or SS means walking around and killing people and stuff like that. That the Jays is trying to portray it with. In the later years, Mandela was actually housed not on Robben Island, on the mainland itself, in a house. He was living in a house. And later on.
Yes, with a servant, really, more like a butler guard kind of person that cooked for him and all that.
Yes, that's details was.
Where he received good communist visitors from around the world, U.S. presidents, heads of state from all over. The Nelson Mandela myth is just that. It's a myth. And the fact that the South African government at the time offered to release him if he would stop the bombings, and he turned them down flat. That shows you who he really was.
Yes, it was in the mid-80s. P.W. Botha, he was Prime Minister at that point in time, one of the last hard, good Afrikaners. He went to Mandela and he said to him in so many words, just renounce violence. We don't want violence. We only want freedom. We're Afrikaners. We want freedom. So please just denounce violence. And he refused. He said, no, I will not renounce violence. The armed struggle, it was at that point called the armed struggle, a terrorist campaign against the legitimate government in South Africa. We go on. We will continue with the armed struggle until we win that armed struggle. That was Mandela's words. So,
well, the funny part about this, Schalk, is that to me is the fact that all those millions, of tons of arms are now locked up in South Africa, and the ANC government doesn't want to let black hands get on them anymore because they know they'll take them out of power.
Yeah, that's also the fact. You must remember when the new government came to power, they literally inherited everything that the old apartheid regime built up. Amongst those are nuclear weapons. Now, they were supposed to have dismantled some of all those nuclear weapons. But there's rumors, and I'm very careful to say it's the truth. So I'm saying there's rumors that those weapons are actually still in existence today. So yes, no, it's very true what you're saying.
I have heard that, Schalk. This is a reference you will understand. This is the relief of Ladysmith. I'm back.
Okay,
Ladies,
wonderful, Karen.
Relief.
Sorry, it was so nice talking with you today. I'll let you folks continue, and I'm really listening intently to the show. Your accent forces me to, Schalk, but I'm doing my best here. So thank you so much, and it was a great pleasure to meet you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia, for standing in for a few minutes.
Thank you, Patricia.
Right, so Schalk, we're now up to after the Boer War, where there's been a complete destruction of at least 20% of the Afrikaner population. But
yes.
That Boer War and also the Zulu Wars were the beginning. For the world, if they were going to look at Afrikaners correctly, those are the areas that they need to look at: the resolution, the strength, the courage, the amazing belief in God, their faith, which got them through the Battle of Blood River. Those things that make an Afrikaner who he is, that is what the world should have looked at, rather than what they are saying about us now.
Exactly, Karen, exactly. You must remember that and this is going to sound a little bit like social Darwinism, but because of all the bad times that the Afrikaner people had to go through, I think only the strongest and the most resolute actually survived. So you're sitting with a human stock that came from Europe because they were persecuted there. So you already have a very small number of people. I wouldn't call them different, at least, from other people in the way they think and the way they operate. Right? The pioneers. You already have that as the basis of this nation. And then it goes through the tempering of centuries, where you have, it simply had to be very strong and very resilient.
It's like steel being forged in a fire, isn't it?
Exactly. This is literally what happened to the Afrikaner people. We were forged in battle. Not the word that we were not looking for, but we were forged in battle. That's the best way that you can describe it. After that, you must remember that after the Boer War in 1914, the Boers rise up again in the 1940 referendum, and once again the British, through all ways and means, stopped that rebellion. But we won the peace, because after that Afrikaners effectively ran South Africa. And we ran it even more so after 1948 when the Nationalist Party, the Afrikaner Nationalist Party, took over the colonial government.
By popular vote. By popular vote, they won the election for the first time ever.
Yes, in 1948, in a general election at that point in time, it was still a multiracial election. It was won legitimately by the Nationalist Party of the Afrikaners, the Nationalist Party of Dr. Malan. They won the elections and they became the government of the colony of South Africa, the Union of South Africa, that was still the British Union, British colony. And the events led up to 1961, and in 1961, under the great Dr. Verwoerd, we declared ourselves a republic. And once again, the Afrikaners were free. That was the zenith of Afrikanerdom when we achieved our freedom in 1961. And we were a big Afrikaner republic, now incorporating the old two Boer Republic and Natal and the Cape Province, the old Cape Colony. It was a huge Afrikaner victory in soul, in spirit, in every way that you can look at.
So, for the first time then, they were acknowledged as a people, as a government, but we were still a British colony.
Yeah, up to 1961, and then after 1961, it was the Republic of South Africa.
Literally ruled by ourselves, but we also need to say, Schalk, that the Union of South Africa was not something the Boers wanted. It was kind of forced upon them by the British, was it not? They amalgamated this whole lot, demanded that everybody integrated. And so the Afrikaner republics then became the Union of South Africa, with all these disparate tribes and peoples and things that they now had to rule and control.
That's a fact. You must remember when the Union of South Africa came into being, it was an amalgamation of vast territories across South Africa, and the planning was even to make it even bigger, to even incorporate what is today Botswana, the old Botswana land, what is today Zimbabwe, the old Southern Rhodesia, even maybe the possibility of Northern Rhodesia, that's Malawi today, and Zambia. So it was an amalgamation of a huge number of different tribes, of ethnic groups, etc., etc., all now living inside what was called the Union of South Africa. Now, here's the other very important thing you have to remember. When the Union of South Africa came into being, and that was in 1910, in that point in time, for instance, the colored, the brown people of the Cape, the descendants of the old Khoisan people, they could still vote in the Cape province, in the Cape colony. But all over the show, you had the black tribes living on their tribal land. And in 1913, that's a very important date that these days called the start of apartheid. Apartheid wasn't to be for at least 20 years, 30 years after that. In 1913, the British colonial rulers, for the first time, made these areas of the black people independent, semi-independent homelands. The 1913 Native Lands Act. That was where the black people lived at that point in time. They did not live across South Africa.
Wow. So was that the beginning of like Zululand, Venda, or was that later?
That was the beginning of Zululand. That was the beginning of what was later to become the Transkei, the Ciskei, Botswana, all over. Those were the areas that the black people physically lived. What happened was that migratory labor would go to work in the mines, work in the factories, and they would return to their homeland. But that was where the black people were living. White people never stole land from black people. Yes, maybe to an extent the British Empire with all their conquering wars, but white people and especially Afrikaners never stole land. By 1913, it was simply stabilized by the British to say there are the black people, they're living on the tribal area, there's Afrikaners, and there's the British living in the so-called white South Africa.
So essentially, every tribe, including the Afrikaners, every tribe had their own home, their own country, as it were, ruled by themselves. The Africans ruled by their chieftains, their kings, their whatever, under their own rules, their own way of life, no one interfering with anybody else. And the blacks were allowed into the white areas to work.
Exactly. They had to carry passes. Now, you remember in the great anti-apartheid so-called struggle, the whole issue of the pass laws and the passes being carried, this is where it comes from. If the black man wanted to leave his tribal area, where he lived and he had his land and his family and all those things to go, work in the white areas, in the mines and so forth, he needed to get a pass. There's nothing strange about it. It's like a passport. It's like when you even today move between countries, you needed the authorization of the authorities.
Yeah, absolutely.
That came from.
And Schalk, what I always say is that the whites also had to carry a form of identity. We had our identity books with your whole life story in it, your marriage certificate, your gun license, your driver's license, everything was contained, your name and address, everything was contained in that identity book. Everybody had to carry a form of identity, not just the poor blacks.
Exactly, Karen. Today, if I drive to any town around me and the traffic policeman stops me, he wants to see my ID document and my license. There's nothing strange about it. But for some reason, in the end, and I'm never going into those details, I don't we have to, but it became one of those big issues that led to the outcry against apartheid. The black people must always carry their pass with them. But that's not strange. Why is that strange? It's the civilized way of doing things.
Absolutely.
I wanted to add this. When you look at the maps of 1913, you will see that the black areas very clearly. Under the national government, that was now after 1948 when the Afrikaners came to rule South Africa. We didn't decrease the black areas. We increased the black areas. We started to amalgamate and to join where you had all these little small dots and kingdoms and tribal areas. We started to buy out white land around that and started to amalgamate those with the idea of what Verwoerd later called Grand Apartheid. That was basically the balkanization of South Africa. We were building black nations for them to, in the end, have self-determination and be free because we also wanted freedom.
And Schalk, you need to talk about that map over the rainfall map, because the other myth that is given is that the white South Africans gave these poor blacks the most terrible desert properties to live on where they couldn't support themselves.
Yeah, that's once again, I'm going to be very blunt. That's total nonsense. When you look at the rainfall map of South Africa, there's a very clear line right through the middle, north-south of South Africa. The western part of South Africa is basically desert. The only part of the western side of South Africa is the Cape Peninsula, and then the south coast, which is green, which is a lush forest and so forth. But it's a very thin line of good rainfall. Then all of a sudden you have quite high mountains, and then the Great Interior Plateau. But what I spoke about earlier, the Karoo area, for instance, and the Northern Cape, Namakwa land, those areas, which is desert. It's dry, it's desert. You can farm goats and sheep there. You can't even plant lilies. You can't even plant crops. It's simply too dry. In that western part of South Africa, you will not find 5 meters square of old homelands. There's nothing. We never gave black people that area. When you move to the eastern part of South Africa, that is the area where the rain falls. You will find all the black areas in that area. They literally receive the best water, best parts of South Africa. Arable land, very, very good land, close to the shores. Zululand is on the coast. Transkei is on the coast. Ciskei is on the coast. Why is that necessary? For the very simple reason they could build their own harbors and have free trade to the rest of the world.
But they didn't use it for that, did they?
Excuse me, Karen?
They didn't utilize that land the way it was intended.
You see, that's what makes it so sad. If you drive through a country like Transkei today, now you drive from the west to the east. The west where the lesser rainfall is and the white farmers live, you have expansive farms. It's well planned. It's productive. The moment that you move into the Transkei area, it's erosion. The land is barren. They cut off all the trees. It's basically desert now, but desert in our rainfall area. That's the sad truth of it. So they never received the worst part of the country. The worst part of the country is the western side, where you could go and look for yourself on a map. No homeland. They received a huge chunk of the eastern part of South Africa, where they lived. You must remember something: the black people, the Nguni people, and the Sesotho people, and so forth. When they started to move from Central Africa into Southern Africa, and that was possible at the same time that the Europeans coming in on the southern part. They basically only moved as far as there was enough pasture land for their cows, for their cattle. They didn't move into the dry interior of South Africa. So they never lived there. But today they claim the whole of South Africa. Everything is seen as a black country and is seen as it was stolen by the white man from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Schalk. And the white taxpayer was supporting those homelands. It wasn't we just dumped them there, fenced them in, shot them by their millions, didn't educate them. All of those stories that the world believes about the Afrikaner is total rubbish.
Karen, yes, you touch on a very, very crucial aspect here. Yes, the crucial question the critic of apartheid must answer me. Where did the development of the black Africans come from, if not from white taxpayers? White taxpayers, and they are still today, are the people paying the taxes in South Africa. They cross-subsidized the black homelands, and they cross-subsidized basically all the development in not only South Africa, but later on Southern Africa. Remember what is today the independent nation of Namibia. We took it over from the Germans after the First World War. We looked after that country. We built it with Afrikaner white capital coming from South Africa. Botswana to a very large extent exists today because of white Afrikaner capital that was invested into that company over the years. Zimbabwe, for the most part, was built on white Afrikaner capital. We built it.
And yet we are the people who are vilified for doing that thing.
Exactly. You must remember something. Afrikaner South Africa, and when I now speak of Afrikaners, I also include the English South African. Because I said during especially the latter part of the last century, we started to join into one nation. White South Africa, Afrikaner of South Africa, just simply never fit into world plans because we were independent. We didn't adhere to the rules of the United Nations. We did the thing on our own. And I think that was the main reason why apartheid had to go, because if apartheid went, Afrikaner will also win. So the main war was never against apartheid. That was the pretext. The actual war was to unsettle Afrikaners from the position of power in South Africa and Southern Africa, because we effectively ruled Southern Africa.
Schalk, if you'll hold one moment, I have to do a station check. You're listening to Radio Free South Africa on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Please remember that this is only possible with the help of your donation to keep us on air. So please go to our store and indulge in some goodies, or make the best donation you can in order for us to keep bringing you truth and news that the mainstream media will not. This is your host, Karen Smith, and our guest today is Schalk van der Merwe, direct from South Africa. There we go, Schalk.
Thank you very much, Karen. Karen, I want to touch on something that's also very relevant, and it's the fight of the Afrikaner people and in later years, even the rest of South Africa, even black people, colored people, against communism. And especially because it runs parallels to the American people's own fight against communism through the years. It's a very interesting parallel that we can explore here. Can we maybe take a little bit of time for that?
Yes, absolutely. Schalk, if we don't get through all our agenda for today, I will have you on again, because you have a fascinating insight and an incredible researched history into all of these things. So yes, go right ahead. The show is yours.
Thank you very much, Karen. Firstly, what I want to direct people to understand, because of the British Empire, this is actually a contradiction of why did Afrikaners fight on the wrong side of the world wars, and the right side should have been against the British Empire. But in the end, the Afrikaners actually fought with the British Empire, both in the First World War, shoulder to shoulder in the latter part of the First World War, with American soldiers in the trenches. At the Great Battle of Delaware, for instance, we were fighting literally side by side with the fresh American troops coming in after 1917. So we have a history with the Americans even as far back as the First World War. When the Second World War broke out, once again, Afrikaners joined the Allied forces and fought intensely in northern Africa. We fought with the Americans in Tunisia. We fought at Al Alamein. We were one of the key players of Al Alamein. But very importantly, under American General Mark Clark, we also took part in the invasion of Italy, with the soft underbelly of the Axis powers. And we side by side, number 3 and number 1 SA armored divisions fought side by side with the Americans against fascism. So once again, we were the allies at that point. General Mark Clark, for instance, he made a remark at one point to say that amongst the South Africans, he's never seen battle units as highly decorated as the South Africans. That part of our history is mostly written away. It's hidden. It's even denied. And that's so sad because we fought. We played our due, even in the Second World War, shoulder to shoulder with the other Allied nations to bring freedom to Europe, to bring freedom to the world. But it didn't stop there. When the communists tried to take over Southern Korea and the Americans stepped in and the Korean War took place, the first nation that actually joined the Americans in that fight were South Africans. We sent over pilots, we sent over whole battalions that fought in Korea side by side with the Americans. We fought against the communists. That was the first time that we actually came head-to-head against the communist forces of the world. We never fought, of course, in Vietnam, because at that point in time, we had our own Vietnam. And what do I mean by that? It's our engagement in Angola. Now, in Angola, we also fought side by side with CIA operatives. Today, it's general knowledge that CIA and Reagan's government, for instance, played a clear role in supporting the South African forces there. So then we fought communism whilst the Americans, our American brothers, were fighting the communists in Vietnam. We paid our dues. We fought Soviet Russia. We fought the East Germans. We fought the Cubans. Cuba is the longest and the most severe of the enemies of the United States. Afrikaner people have always fought the Cubans. These days, Cubans are imported by our current government because in the olden days, the Cubans were on the side of the ANC, who stood there running the country. We Afrikaners, we fought the Cubans. The point I'm just trying to make is for the American public to understand that Afrikaners have been your brothers in arms for many generations. If we can get to that point, that people really understand that, we were over a very big hurdle. Unfortunately, popular media has literally written the Afrikaner people out of history. It should never happen. And that in itself is the start of a genocidal process against the Afrikaner people.
Absolutely. Because I would dearly like to have had the time to get to events of the last few weeks. But genocide, on December the 9th, 1948, this was decided by the United Nations what genocide is. Any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Now, if you look at that definition of genocide, one of the things that I keep getting told is that genocide is too big a word to use about what is happening to the Afrikaner, which is not true.
Yeah, Karen, it's very contentious. It's very contentious, even in South Africa, because previously we maybe had the split in the white nation between Afrikaans-speaking people and English-speaking people. These days, it's the classical split between conservatives and liberals. The liberals simply deny that there's anything funny going on in South Africa, whilst the conservative people, they started to realize quite some time ago that there's a concerted effort in South Africa to rid South Africa of Afrikaners, yes, and a little bit more broadly of white people. It's in the media. It's in political songs that's being sung. It's political leaders of the black community making all these demands, etc., etc. Not subtly, but overly. The message is a simple one: kill the whites, destroy the whites. A person like Julius Malema of very strong and upcoming black consciousness type of movement, the EFF, he is blatantly saying these things. He's blatantly making it clear. There are struggle songs of the ANC that literally says, kill the bull, kill the farmer. And the problem is, it's happening. It's literally happening. We don't have the numbers, but it must run into tens of thousands of black on white murders that have taken place over the last 20 years. Of farmers, we know, and that's not the last number. It's not the last thing to be said about the numbers of farmers, but we know there's in excess of 4,000 farmers that have been killed in black to white murders. Karen, what is very shocking. The media is trying to play this off as what is called normal crime. Now, okay, by definition, crime is abnormal, but in South Africa, you actually get something that the media calls normal crime. They are trying to spin it, to tell us, but it's actually just normal crime. The fact that people are dying here. It's the way that people are dying that's become the main hallmark of why people believe that there is an actual genocide going on. You will find in case study after case study, it is absolutely terroristic ways and means that people are being killed. Elderly people can't defend them. They can't even, if it was only a robbery, why kill the person? The person can't even defend himself. These people are tortured. They are lit with fire. They are burnt with iron, with clothing iron. Children are being killed. Not very far from where I lived was really gruesome incident where they took a little girl and they literally held her by her hair and they blew her head off. Why would you do stuff like that if it's so-called normal crime? If you just simply want to steal or rob a person, why do it in such horrific, violently ways? It's terrible. And that is where the hate crime, the hate aspect of this very clearly surfaces. You will find many times that after these murders, when they go up and clean the murder scene, there's actually written things like, we killed the white pigs, or we are coming back for the other ones, or stuff like that. In our social media, if you go to our mainstream media, social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, etc., you will see the message repeated over and over and over again. Kill the whites, murder the whites. They call us pinkies. Kill the pinkies. The message is just clear, and for some reason, people are denying it. Local media, local white media in South Africa is simply denying it. And because they are denying it, I think the world media is also denying it by virtue of ourselves saying there is no genocide. So why would world media then come and say that there is a genocide if we ourselves, we are denying it?
Absolutely, but Schalk, genocide is not solely bodies piling up in the streets, although that aspect of the white life in South Africa is horrific. Genocide is the destruction of your history, your heritage, your language. All of those things contribute, and those aspects cannot be denied as happening in South Africa, as shown just this week.
Yes, exactly, Karen. Because you must remember that the physical killing of whites, the government has been very clear in playing that. They are sympathetic, and sometimes a minister would even go to a site and you will see the pictures on the TV of him holding some family member of the deceased, etc. So we can't really point the finger to the ANC government and say, but it's you killing our people. But on the other hand, the institutionalized discrimination and eradication of language, culture, and economic stability of Afrikaners and white people in general. That can't be denied. You can see it on the law books of South Africa how the discrimination is literally forcing us into into the status of economic refugees. Our language. You must remember that the two official languages of South Africa were English and Afrikaans. We now have 11 languages as official languages, but English is generally used as the language of government. If you try to communicate in Afrikaans, people just simply don't respond to it. Literally, you would stand in a row and you would come to a desk where a state official needs to help you, and you would speak to him in Afrikaans, which is your right. It's one of the official languages, and he would simply ignore you until such time you speak English. But the next guy in the row is maybe a Tswana person, and he will speak Tswana, and he will be helped in Tswana. The next time is maybe a Zulu, and he will be helped in Zulu. But if you speak Afrikaans, you are simply ignored. That's on ground level. But it's institutionalized because Afrikaans is continually attacked in our education system, for instance. Previously, we had a host of Afrikaner universities, Afrikaans universities, and world-class universities. Of those, there were only 3 prominently Afrikaans universities left at the beginning of this year, being the University of Free State, University of Stellenbosch, it's sometimes called our Afrikaans Harvard, and Potchefstroom, so-called the Dikbokke. Now, at University of Free State, with all kinds of constructed racial incidents, they bullied the people to the point where effectively the University of the Free State of Bloemfontein is not Afrikaans anymore. It's become an English-speaking dual medium type of university. At Potchefstroom, there was an incident where one of the communities, if you want to call that, they had a little ritual where they would raise their arm and they would say something. And our own white liberal media then branded that as them giving the Nazi salute. I mean, Nazism has been dead for 50 years. And it ended up in the Minister of Higher Education himself being a communist, blatant Monday, then investigating this whole thing, and it became a huge media scandal, and they basically forced Potchefstroom to accept terms and conditions that the government imposed on them. And they killed off Afrikaans basically there. Stellenbosch, in this week, simply changed their language policy for the next year, for the coming year, to English. So basically, Afrikaans as a higher education language is being phased out at all the universities in South Africa.
Because of student riots.
Yes, underlying to that, now you have all these student riots, and there's a parallel again with your own riots now in Missouri and other places.
Mm-hmm.
And where you have these black students running amok with the strangest things that they want, and people are actually listening to them, and they are adhering to them. And one of the things that they are after is Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. Now, if they don't want to use Afrikaans, it's their choice. Nobody is forcing Afrikaans onto them. So why is it a problem that other students whose mother tongue, whose home language is Afrikaans, why is it a problem if those people want their classes in Afrikaans? But that's one of the demands. We must stop Afrikaans. We must kill off Afrikaans in higher education. In lower education, in the school system, we are facing exactly the same. We are facing the problem where traditionally Afrikaans schools are now being overrun by English and Xhosa and Zulu-speaking people. For some reason, it's better for them to drive with the bus kilometers far to go to these Afrikaans schools, where in their own communities they have their own schools.
And now we're going to teach Mandarin instead of Afrikaans. Mandarin.
Yeah. The next thing that's happening now, it came as quite a surprise. For some reason, people are going to have to learn to speak Chinese, Mandarin now in future, for some reason. So in other words, Afrikaans is now in status lower than a totally foreign language of Chinese. It simply does not make sense until you realize that the main struggle has always been just simply to get rid of the Afrikaner people in South Africa. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the ANC themselves are also not running this country. Even the DA, if they one day maybe come to power with the opposition party, they will most probably not really effectively being run in South Africa. It's been a struggle for centuries to get rid of the Afrikaner, to get rid of the Boers out of this country. Every step of the way at this point in time.
Absolutely, because there's the same thing going on there about your statues being removed, the same as here. Anything to do with the Confederate flag, the Confederate soldiers, everything must be moved, changed, broken down. Because why? You can't rewrite history. History just is.
Yes, the irony of the statues. The Boer generals, many of our statues, most of them are Boer generals. The Boer generals fought against British colonialism. We were the first people in Africa that took up arms against the British colonial oppression system. They must be the heroes of the black people because they fought against British colonialism. Now they are branded as part of apartheid. There was no apartheid before 1948. When the National Party came to power, there was not something called apartheid. It was a term called much later, about even the 1950s. Under the old Boer republics, the Boer republics recognized the black tribal kings. They brought the Boer republics to accommodate the black kingdoms. But for some reason, they are now branded as apartheid. The two doesn't even have any correlation.
No.
It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same as in your situation where the battle flag is a racist flag. How is that possible? The Southern states fought for freedom. But for some reason, the flag is being seen as oppressive. I simply can't understand this.
No. And the problem is, Schalk, for me, is that people should have been watching what is going on in South Africa, because if you look at what happened in Paris yesterday, this is what is coming all over the world, because the noble savage needs to be looked after by the minority worldwide, white people.
Yes, that's a fact, Karen. That's a fact. There's always this view of the white person or the Western power must always stand back so that somebody else can be accommodated. And in South Africa, this has led to the white population now really being under physical pain. I don't know where we're going to be 5 years from now. We can't get jobs anymore because of affirmative action. We can't have businesses anymore because of black empowerment, black empowerment legislation. We can't go into the state service. They only hire black people, and so they can go on. So they are systematically squeezing us out of the system here. But where do you go from here? I don't think the Americans will allow us if we started to turn up in both those now in New York City. Where are we going? What's going to happen to us? What's going to happen if Australia faces the same problem as ourselves? What is going to happen to the white population in the United States? There's studies that show by 2050 you will be a significantly small minority in the United States. What is going to happen with your population there? And it's not about being racist. It's just simply there's an attack now, and people for some reason try to deny it. But it's there. It's there. If a person writes on Facebook, kill whiteys, kill the cracker. Apparently in Europe and Britain, the term for white person is a cracker. Kill the crackers. why not an outcry against that? We're not seeing it. But let a person right there kill a Muslim.
Oh, my
kill a black
goodness.
person, and all of a sudden the whole media is up in arms against that.
Absolutely.
Understand that in the end going to be the problem that we have to deal with.
Yeah, the hate speech on Facebook and other social media against the white Afrikaner is horrific. The show is about to end. Thank you very, very much, Schalk. We will have you on again. Thank you so very much. And God bless America, God bless South Africa, and God help the world we live in today.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
We're an anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week.
Yes.
But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting.
Yes, I see.
By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs.
Be quiet.
But by a 2/3 majority in the case of
Be
more
quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look. It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible.
You're a loony.
The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
I have worked with the CIA, NSA, Templars, and Bilderbergers. Now I work for you. My show will disclose secrets, science, and esoteric knowledge. Join me, Stephen D. Kelly, for 2 hours every Thursday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time on freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, Studio A. You can also listen to previous shows by going to youtube.com/Free Revolution Radio.